Hello and welcome to this week's episode of BalletWise. My name is Michael Wise. I will be your host and curator for today. Now, for starting off, the first thing is I am not a medical professional. I don't play one on television. But the whole key for you to understand is these are going to be my opinions. These are things that I've been able to help other people with. So my goal here is to help you, whether you're the student, whether you're that professional dancer, or whether you're the parent of a child that has these great dreams. Please be aware that the stories that we're going to tell are true stories. These are real individuals that have had these experiences. But we will always change those names because we want to protect the innocent. You know, some of these stories are going to be rather difficult. Some of these stories are going to bring up subject matters that may be traumatic for that individual. And we want to make sure that they're fully protected and that they feel they can say what they need to say through me. So, moving forward with this week's episode, we're going to talk about an individual who, in his story, that I've already been able to help move beyond his trauma, the things that he's had to deal with as a student and as a young professional, to be able to move on to the kind of career that he's always dreamed to have. So today I'd like to talk to you about the idea of what happens, how life can interfere with your dancing career, and what you might need to do to get it back on track and moving forward. Now, Edward is a student. A young man. He's from the Midwest, and he had this amazing opportunity to go travel and study with one of the best absolute ballet schools in the United States. It was his dream. And after 2 years, life happened. He had to go home. He had to handle things with his family. And he got off track. He was still a talented, very, very capable young dancer, but he didn't know what to do and he didn't know where to go. Luckily, a friend of his invited him to come train in Chicago, which is what he did. And he got back a little bit on track. He got a taste of what the professional life would be. But this is where the problem started. He applied to companies, and the first company that gave him a reasonable offer was a very, very small company. He joined them for his first professional season. He ended up having to hold down a separate job the whole time to be able to make ends meet. But he thought he was on the right track. Every day he'd go into work and he'd always have to make compromises. Compromises as a young dancer, compromises as a professional, because that was just the way that company worked. He'd come in the morning and there really wouldn't be a company class. There was no way for him to maintain his technique. The choreography and the ballets they were doing were lackluster and limited. So he was never improving as a dancer, never increasing as an artist. And he learned to come to terms with that and felt like, well, I guess this is what it is. About the midway point of his season is when I actually got to meet this young man. And he just showed up one day for a class, the class that I taught. At the end of the class, I pulled him aside. I gave him some corrections that he needed to work on. And all of a sudden, his technique was just working in a way that it has not worked in years. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that I am, a ballet messiah. By any means, I'm not. But the difference is if you get the right kind of training, that's when the magic can happen for you. He was in a position where he wasn't getting the right kind of training in the company he was in. And when he stepped into my world, he then started receiving the kind of technique and training he desperately needed to be the kind of dancer that he was meant to be. After that experience, he understood that what he was doing was not right. He had to deal with the toxic environment of being in this company. He had to deal with the fact that there were dancers there that were never at a professional level. There were dancers there that were at a point in their careers where they really should have stopped dancing, but but they couldn't give it up. And he felt limited and like a part of himself was starting to die. After the experience here, he understood that he could have more than that. And I'm proud to say that he has been accepted into a brand new company. It is a very respectable company, and he is going to be moving forward. And this fall, he will be dancing again. But he'll be dancing in an environment which is actually more of the professional experience that he's expecting. Now, things that we need to think about as dancers, as students, or even as parents, is that there are more of these types of companies out there than you could imagine. And we have to be very careful not to rush to conclusions or jump at the first opportunity we get, because we need to make sure we're doing the right kind of research and understanding what we're getting into. When you have a dancer that's coming from that type of an environment and is actually trying to be better, you're going to be dealing with a certain level of mental trauma because they thought this was what it was not supposed to be like. You're dealing with lack of the ability to do the technique that they've been able to do most of their lives. The wrong kind of training in a professional environment does not make you a better dancer. When you enter into a company, you're not finished. You're starting the next part of your journey. So understanding that there are these environments that we might go into that could be very corruptive. And what quite often you're left with is a damaged dancer that you're not going to be able to get into any other company because they've sucked the life out of you. And for Edward, his life was removed from him. He felt stagnant, he was depressed, he dealt with so many things where, he's a natural turner, but he couldn't do pirouettes very well anymore. He was a natural jumper, but he could barely get off the floor. When you're doing the wrong kind of technique and you're in an environment that does not lead towards a healthy mental state, as well as a good developmental state, you are going to be in a position to begin your ending of your career a lot sooner than you ever thought. So I'm coming to you to talk to you about this because it does lead to other subject matters and things that we need to be aware of. And luckily, Edward was able to find that person that could help guide him out of this dark zone that he had unfortunately fallen into. Now, he finished his season. He did the respectable thing. But he did not renew his contract, and he's moving on. But he would not have been in a position to do that if he hadn't come across someone that could mentor him, someone that understood the difficulties that he's going through and helping him understand and rebuild his confidence. Because as a dancer, you have to believe in what you're doing just as much as what you're capable of doing. And because when you go out on that stage, you have to know it's going to work. And you also have to be in a position of, if it doesn't work, you know how to handle it. And that all comes from confidence. It doesn't come from fear. But I wanted to bring this up because it's going to lead on to our topic later on in this cast about these things. So I hopefully this little understanding of this one person's history can help you understand to not make some of the same mistakes, because life will happen. We're human beings. We're dancers. And I'll talk from my own personal experience. I studied at North Carolina School of the Arts. In the middle of my sophomore year, I find out that my mother has breast cancer. They didn't tell me. I only found out about it when I went home over the summer. But because they made the choice that they didn't want me to pull me out of the program I was in, because they knew it was the right place for me. Do I agree with that now as an adult? I'm not quite sure. But they knew I would come home as soon as I found out. Life happens. We will have delays in our technique. And we can view those as positives or negatives, but it shouldn't pull us off our true track. But hopefully this type of information can help you as a parent of a child that's a dancer, or help you as a dancer dealing with some of these situations, that we can kind of help you along a little bit. And let's welcome the idea of our first major topic. Small companies that probably aren't the most healthiest platforms for dancers. Now, we've all either danced in one of those companies, or we've known people to have been in those companies, or we know of companies that have that reputation. You know the one? It's the company you go to die. And I know that's kind of rough to say, but what that meaning is, once you go to that company, you're never going to be able to go anywhere else. So you pretty much stop dancing. We need to understand that those companies most likely are not the healthiest environment for people. So let's just dissect this a little bit. Let's understand things from the point of view of the company. Quite often, they start these companies with the idea of wanting to present great classical ballet or a new point of view of dance individually, whether it's contemporary or modern or balletic, but they always have this creative avenue that they feel is not being met. And usually they can be very charismatic, but it all comes down to this: money. You're dealing with small companies that are constantly having to figure out where that next dollar is going to come from. Whether it is through limited fundraising, whether it is through ticket sales, whether it is through grants, but they're constantly having to fight for these things. And usually they're not very successful, because if they were, they wouldn't be as small as they are. But let's also look at some of the other issues that go on in these companies. Quite often, your artistic director, male or female, is the director because they not only had a successful career, but they also have really big personalities. They're great on stage. They're great presenting in other people. But you know what happens when you have that type of a personality? Quite often you can be very volatile. Not everyone has learned to control their tempers. And when you're constantly being stressed out, when you're constantly trying to get the best out of your dancers, but you have dancers that are limited in their capabilities or their training, so you've also got that stress, as well as the stress of finding more money, finding a way to carry on and do things, you will have directors that will just lose it on people. That's not a healthy environment to be in. I'm by no means trying to say that the problems that these companies are having aren't real, but quite often these companies are in a continuous pattern of struggle and damage control. And they make promises to dancers that they're going to be able to start their professional careers, that they're going to actually be paid a certain amount, but it's not a living wage. And then your dreams of being that dancer are being filled. And you go to those companies and you're having to work a cut rate job on the side just to make ends meet. And then you're going into these companies and you're rehearsing like crazy, but you're also not surrounded by the best talent in the room. And because quite often everything is limited in these companies, you walk in thinking, all right, I'm going to get better. I'm going to be a better dancer. I'm going to be able to get that part. But every time you come into class, you just notice that you're not getting better. And the people around you are not getting any better either. And in some cases, even worse. And that in itself demoralizes us as dancers. It also causes more stress for the company, because they see the level of the dancer diminishing. And they are going to blame it on the dancer. When the reality is, it really does come down to those company classes at the beginning of the day, the expectations that whoever is teaching can guarantee they should be able to have. When I teach classes, I'm walking in there and I already know what I want to see from those dancers. I already know where I want to make the adjustments. When you walk into that class, it's school 101 all over again. You should be hitting perfect fifth positions. You should have perfectly turned out legs. You should have excellent port de bras. All of those things that we kind of take for granted that we know we should be working on, if we're not working on those the first thing when we get up in the morning, when we walk into that company class, everything is going to start to fall apart. Your center will go, and that really does come down to who is teaching that class. Companies who have limited budgets can't hire, quite often, an excellent ballet master or ballet mistress to teach those classes. Quite often they will relegate it to another dancer in the company or someone they think is okay to teach those classes. And it ends up slowly causing that company to fall apart in that one area. So look at it once again. You have a small company that's constantly fighting to get recognition and money. And since they're having trouble getting that money, that leg of the company is starting to fall apart. Then you have the other leg of you have these dancers that are not being groomed and developed to be the level of the dancer you need in your company. So that leg starts to fall apart. That creates a negative environment. Quite often you're going to have artistic staff that are going to be angry and they're going to want to point the finger at you or someone else. You're going to have dancers in the company that are going to be angry and going to become catty, and they're going to start pointing the fingers at you or someone else. Everybody's trying to find a place to put the blame, instead of looking at the picture and trying to resolve the pieces. Ballet is an art form, but it's just as much of a business. And you need to understand as a dancer that you have to be able to see beyond what that business is offering. You've heard this all the time, especially when it comes to like professional sports teams or professional college athletes. I know a large number of these individuals, and you know what? They didn't want to go professional because it stopped being fun. It turned into a business. It felt like it was work. It did not feel like they were doing what they were meant to do. To them, they started doing this because it was their love, it was their passion, and it was fun. If you go into a company and you just feel 24 hours a day that when you're around them, that this is a job, this is work. You're dealing with mediocre classes, you're dealing with uninspiring choreography and dancing, that is not going to inspire you to present the best of what you have to offer on that stage. In my career as a student, I was not what you would necessarily say was the best behaved student in the class. All right? I had a chip on my shoulder, probably bigger than I am, and I'm a short guy. So, as we like to say in my family, you give me a red hat and put me in the garden and you're going to think I'm a garden gnome. So, moving forward, the whole point is everyone looked at me and said, yeah, he's too short, he's too muscular, he's not going to be able to do this. So I had a giant chip on my shoulders. You know what I did with that? I'd walk into a ballet class and I'd look at the new teacher and go, you got 5 minutes, prove you can teach me. So immediately you can see that I'm probably not going to be the best student. Now, those teachers that took control of the class and proved that they could teach me something, I would follow to the end of the earth. In companies, there are those teachers When I was dancing in Russia, I had two of these absolutely amazing ballet masters. One by the name of Alexander Prokofiev. He was like, for me, the best fit. Like a traditional sports coach and a true mentor. He gave me nicknames like the Stupid American and all this other stuff, and all I could do was laugh at it. He had earned my respect. He had proven he could teach me. But the difference is, I was always looking to be better. And I've been in companies where that was part of the attraction. Every morning you would come into class and you knew you were getting better. You didn't want to leave. Even if your pay was garbage, you didn't want to leave because you were being fulfilled as an artist. You were being fulfilled as a dancer. I've also been in companies where every day I'd come into class and I would kill myself in company class and I would just see everything go downhill. At no point in my life have I ever thought that I didn't want to be a part of this industry. I started taking ballet at 8. I never looked back. By 10, I wanted to be one of the best male dancers on the planet. But when you're working in a garbage company and you aren't inspired and they're angry and you're angry, the thought crossed my mind, I should probably just quit. That's why I left. I knew right then and there I had to get out of that company as quickly as possible. I started looking immediately. I ended up going into a company that was a small company, but it had an excellent artistic director who took the understanding and the training and the type of choreography we'd work with. It was one of his strong suits. I needed that time in that other small company that was healthy to help repair the damage the other company had done. So you, as a young dancer, let's say you just finished your professional school, or you've just graduated from an excellent college or conservatory that's been training you, and you're trying to get out into the industry. I want you to be aware that you need to think clearly and understand what you want as a dancer, and make sure that you are not compromising yourself to such a degree that you're going to go into something just because it fulfills your dream, when the reality is it's going to give you the nightmare. It's not your dream. Your dream is to be in a place where you feel fulfilled. A nightmare is where they take that fulfillment from you. So I'm not trying to bash dancers that have gone into those situations, and I'm not trying to bash companies that are dealing with those situations. But I do feel like we all have to understand that being artists, we're rather sensitive. To be on that stage and to perform the best that we need to perform, we have to feel like we have been provided with everything. Therefore, when I'm on that stage, I can give everything. When I've worked with dancers, I've basically always tell them, my goal is to give them everything they need so I can have unrealistic expectations. Because if you're not being able to, if you're not being provided for, whether it is as a mentor, or whether it is technically, or whether it is even financially sometimes, if you don't feel like they're at least making an effort to cover all the bases, how can you feel that commitment that you need to feel to move, to go on that stage, to then present the best that you can have? Now, I realize many of you out there are probably going to say, no, when I go out on stage, I'm always giving 100%. There's 100%, and then there's 500% because you truly believe in what you're doing and you believe where you are. When I've felt that ability, that I knew that company was taking care of me, When I went out on that stage, I took care of that company because there was no fear. There was nothing limiting me at all. And I could handle anything that came out on stage. It was the marriage that you're always looking for. When I've worked in those companies where that's not provided, I never held back, but I knew there was always something that felt like it was limiting. And as dancers, we don't ever want to feel like we're being held back or we're being boxed in. We want to feel like we're being fulfilled and that we're actually bringing to this organization what they desperately need. Because an organization is nothing but a family. And we all know that there are great families in this world that are very supportive and loving, and there are other dysfunctional ones that the goal is you need to get as far away as humanly possible. But you're going to have to figure out for yourself, are these the types of companies you want to go into? Are you the one that can just gloss over all the garbage and still live your dream? Or are you the kind of person that needs to avoid it because it will destroy your dream? But these are only questions that you can answer. So be aware that moving forward, I want to tackle these subjects. But we also have to understand, we have to lighten it up some. Take a deep breath, everyone. My goal here is not to beat people up, but it is to bring attention to the problems within the industry, whether it's the professional, whether it's at the school level, or whether it is something you personally are going through right now. These are all very difficult subjects, and there's a lot of emotion in all these things. So let's just take a deep breath and remember, why do we dance? Why do we do this? I did this because it just made me feel in ways I didn't even know were possible. It put me on stage. I got to be every character in every storybook you can think of. It allowed me to be something so much more than just the person I am for you or for anyone else. You know, my own mother said the first time I was on stage, I looked like I was more at home up there than I do in real life. So let's keep that in mind, that we're performers. We love this art form, but we also have to understand that we sometimes have to take a critical eye and look at it because, you know, there's a very, very fine line between love and hate. And we don't ever want to get to the point where we're so disillusioned in what our industry has to offer us that we want to walk away. So take a deep breath. I'm here because I want to be able to help. I want to take your questions. So if you've got a good question, put it in the comments. You know, reach out to us, because I want to be able to help other individuals. I've helped so many others, and it's not because it's for me, it's because there were so many people along my career that were there to help me. And if I don't do this for others, I'm being disrespectful to them. And you'll learn more about that as we go. You'll learn who some of these individuals are. But right now, I want you to understand that I want to help all of you. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but if we can start the conversation, eventually I think we'll be able to find the right answer. So just remember, if you like what you're hearing, hit a like. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. And remember, give us your questions. You don't want me making this stuff up. I think you deserve to be heard. Remember, we will always change the names because we want to protect you, because I expect that over time we're going to get messages for people that are going through certain experiences, whether they're in their schools or whether they're in their companies. And we want to make sure that you feel safe, because I want to create this to be something where you can ask your questions and know that you're going to get an honest answer. And we may not agree, but the point is we need to start the conversation. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And hopefully we'll see you the next time. Thank you.